Break free from toxic relationships and make room for true love. Have you ever wondered why you attract negative patterns? How to break the cycle? Break free from toxic relationships and discover the peace and harmony you deserve. It's not about depending on others, but connecting with yourself. Attracting genuine love is a reflection of who you are inside. Are you ready for this transformation? It's time to create new patterns and live the life you truly desire. Break free from toxic relationships and take the first step toward emotional freedom. From an early age, we're conditioned to seek love as if it were the missing piece that would make us feel complete. But what if this search leads us, without realizing it, straight into relationships that harm us? According to Jung, what attracts us to a partner isn't just what we want, but also what we deny in ourselves. So when we don't look at our internal wounds, we end up connecting with those who reinforce them. That intense relationship that feels like destiny might just be an echo of the unresolved shadows of our psyche. Often we stay trapped in toxic relationships because they activate old emotional patterns usually rooted in childhood. What seemed like love might just be an unconscious repetition of what we've experienced before. Imagine someone who grew up feeling invisible to their parents. This person might end up attracting emotionally unavailable partners because the brain associates this with what's familiar. The solution isn't to change the other person, but to understand which internal wounds are dictating your choices. This is the first step to breaking the cycle. True transformation happens when a person begins to question, what is this relationship showing me about myself? This doesn't mean we should accept suffering as a learning experience, but rather use it as a mirror to understand what needs to be healed within us. Healthy love isn't born from neediness, but from internal wholeness. And when this happens, connections become more authentic and free from destructive dependencies. But what do we do with these shadows that influence our relationships? This is where the power of the shadow in the human psyche comes in. We don't always consciously choose who enters our lives. Often it's our repressed parts that make this choice for us. Jung called this the shadow, everything we deny in ourselves, but that inevitably finds a way to manifest. In relationships, this can mean attracting partners who reflect our fears, traumas, or characteristics we reject. The problem is that, without realizing it, we project onto these partners what we don't want to see in ourselves. And the more we run away, the stronger the shadow becomes. Have you noticed how some relationships seem to follow a pre-written script? Always the same conflicts, the same disappointments, the same feelings of being stuck in a cycle. This happens because the shadow refuses to be ignored. The partner who irritates you the most might actually be your greatest teacher, pointing out wounds that still need healing. Instead of running away or blaming the other person, the key is to look inward and ask, what is this relationship trying to teach me about myself? Accepting and integrating the shadow is an essential step in transforming the quality of your relationships. This means recognizing that no one is purely light or darkness, and that every human being carries both positive and negative aspects within. Instead of looking for a partner to fill internal voids, true transformation happens when we become complete in our own journey. And it's precisely this search for balance that leads us to one of the most powerful archetypes of the human psyche. Every great transformation begins with a call. In real life, it might come as an unexpected challenge, an emotional crisis, or even the feeling that something is missing. Jung described this trajectory as the hero's journey, a path where each person needs to face their own shadows, overcome internal obstacles, and discover their true essence. The problem is that many try to avoid this journey, seeking shortcuts or distractions. But the truth is that without facing the challenges of your own psyche, evolution doesn't happen. True love doesn't emerge before self-discovery because without knowing yourself, it's impossible to connect genuinely with another. This journey requires courage because it involves looking inward and confronting your own weaknesses. Often this means abandoning relationships, patterns, and beliefs that no longer serve you. Anyone who has experienced a relationship that seemed like an endless cycle of pain and frustration knows how necessary this transformation is. The hero of your own life needs to break these cycles to grow, and this growth doesn't happen just through reading or reflection, but through action. Practicing self-knowledge through therapeutic writing, meditation, or even therapy are concrete steps that help navigate this journey with more clarity. Each hurdle overcome strengthens the psyche and prepares you for healthier connections. In the hero myth, there's always a moment of trial where they must decide between returning to their comfort zone or moving forward. And in real life, this moment arises when a person faces difficult choices. Maintain a relationship that reinforces insecurities, or move forward and rebuild yourself. The hero's path requires leaving behind what no longer makes sense, because only then is it possible to reach the true destination, a love born of emotional balance and integrity. To individuate is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung defined individuation as the process by which an individual integrates all aspects of their psyche, conscious and unconscious, to become a more authentic and complete version of themselves. This path isn't simple, as it requires confronting social masks, deepest fears, and patterns inherited from culture and family. Often we grow up believing we must fit into external expectations. But the truth is that fulfillment only happens when we free ourselves from these constraints and begin to live according to our true essence. The challenge, however, is that this process can be painful, as it means giving up comfortable illusions and facing uncomfortable truths. Individuation is also directly linked to love and relationships. Many romantic conflicts arise because people haven't yet integrated essential parts of themselves. Those who don't recognize their own shadow end up projecting their fears and insecurities onto others, creating relationships based on dependency or idealization. The solution doesn't lie in finding the perfect partner, but in the internal work of becoming a complete person. Jung said that the true meeting of two souls only happens when each has already traveled a solid path of self-discovery. Otherwise, the relationship becomes a distorted mirror of unhealed wounds and neediness. This process doesn't happen overnight. It requires reflection, self-knowledge, and especially the courage to get off autopilot. Questions like, what truly makes me happy? What are my values? And am I living my truth or someone else's? Are fundamental to guide this journey. Individuation doesn't mean isolating yourself or rejecting society, but rather finding a way to exist in the world without losing your authenticity. When this process is successful, relationships become healthier, as they stop being a search for something that's missing and become a genuine exchange between two whole individuals. Projection is one of the most subtle and treacherous psychological mechanisms that shape our perception of reality. According to Carl Jung, we project onto the external world what we don't recognize in ourselves, whether light or shadow. This means that the traits we most admire or reject in others often reflect aspects of our own psyche that remain unconscious. The problem arises when we become prisoners of these projections, repeating behavior patterns without realizing it. In relationships, for example, we might repeatedly attract partners with similar characteristics because, deep down, we're trying to resolve an unresolved internal conflict. The same happens with work situations, friendships, and even in how we view authority figures. But how can we avoid falling into these repetitive cycles? The first step is to develop a deep awareness of yourself. Whenever a strong emotion arises in relation to another person, whether extreme admiration or intense aversion, it's worth asking, what does this say about me? Often, what bothers us in others is something we deny in ourselves. Similarly, when we idolize someone, we might be projecting qualities that we haven't yet recognized as our own. This understanding not only liberates us from draining patterns, but also gives us the autonomy to choose our paths more clearly. The second step is to integrate these projections. This means accepting that we are composed of light and shadow, qualities and flaws, and that we don't need to project these parts onto the external world to deal with them. Jung said that the journey to individuation passes through the integration of the shadow, meaning the recognition of repressed characteristics and the acceptance that they are part of who we are. When we stop rejecting certain aspects of our personality, we also stop projecting them onto others. This process gives us more emotional freedom and reduces the tendency to fall into the same repetitive patterns. Instead of automatically reacting to situations and people, we begin to act more consciously and aligned with our true essence. The reality we live in is a reflection of the energy we emit. This idea, present in both Jungian psychology and spiritual teachings, suggests that our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs act as magnets, attracting experiences that resonate with our inner vibration. Jung spoke about synchronicity, events that seem like coincidences but carry a deep meaning, as a direct reflection of our psychic state. If we're constantly trapped in patterns of fear, scarcity, and insecurity, we'll inevitably attract situations that confirm this reality. On the other hand, when we raise our consciousness and vibrate in tune with abundance, we begin to notice opportunities and connections that previously seemed inaccessible. But what's the secret to changing this frequency? It all starts with self-observation. Our predominant thoughts shape our energy, and often we operate on autopilot without noticing the messages we're sending to the universe. Pay attention to your emotions throughout the day. They are the most accurate indicator of what you're vibrating. If you frequently feel frustration, anger, or resentment, it's essential to investigate the beliefs that sustain these emotions. Perhaps you're stuck in unconscious narratives of self-sabotage or feeding inherited patterns that limit your growth. The key to transforming this energy isn't to ignore negative emotions, but to understand and reframe them. Another essential factor is the coherence between thought, emotion, and action. It's not enough to just desire a change if internally we still carry doubts and insecurities. The conscious mind might affirm, "I want prosperity," but if the unconscious mind believes that money is hard to get, this energetic contradiction prevents the manifestation of the desire. Therefore, true transformation occurs when we align our thoughts with genuine feelings of confidence and take actions that sustain this new vibration. Small daily gestures such as gratitude, visualization, and reprogramming limiting beliefs are powerful for adjusting your frequency. When you emit an authentic energy of confidence and worthiness, the universe responds in the same tune, bringing opportunities, encounters, and experiences that reflect this new reality. Within each of us exists an essential psychic duality, the anima, the feminine principle in men, and the animus, the masculine principle in women. These archetypes, described by Carl Jung, represent the unconscious layers of the psyche that profoundly influence our relationships and our journey of individuation. When these internal aspects aren't recognized and integrated, we tend to project them onto others, creating intense dynamics, romantic idealizations, and even interpersonal conflicts. For example, a man who denies his anima might seek women who represent his repressed qualities, generating unrealistic expectations and constant frustrations. Similarly, a woman who hasn't integrated her animus might feel attracted to authoritarian or distant male figures without realizing she's projecting undeveloped aspects of her own psyche. This projection of anima and animus isn't limited just to romantic relationships, but also influences friendships, professional relationships, and even our perception of the world. When we aren't aware of these archetypes, we can fall into the trap of seeking in others what's missing within us. Often this search translates into emotional dependency, repetitive patterns, and the feeling that we always find the same type of person in our relationships. The key to breaking this cycle is self-observation and the integration of these energies. Men need to connect with their anima to develop empathy, intuition, and sensitivity, while women must balance their animus to strengthen their self-confidence, discernment, and personal power. The integration process requires a deep look within yourself. This can be done through reflection on relationship patterns that repeat, questioning the idealizations we create about others and developing the qualities we seek externally. When we recognize and balance these internal forces, our relationships become more authentic, healthy, and enriching. Instead of seeking an illusory completeness in others, we learn to relate from a place of internal fullness. This not only strengthens bonds, but also frees us from unconscious projections, allowing more truthful and transformative connections. We all carry within us an inner child, that part of us that holds the experiences, feelings, and unmet emotional needs from our childhood. Jung saw healing this child as an essential stage in the individuation process, the path to becoming who we truly are. This inner child is responsible for our deepest emotions, such as fear, insecurity, and the need for affection and validation. When we don't care for this part of ourselves, it can manifest in our relationships, causing us to seek in others what we never managed to find within ourselves. You might have become excessively emotionally dependent on others throughout your life, or perhaps you've built a wall around yourself to avoid new wounds. These reactions come from the inner child who still hasn't received the love, care, and security it needs. The first step to healing this inner child is to recognize its presence and understand what it's trying to communicate to us. Ask yourself, what needs weren't met in my childhood? What fears or traumas are still alive in me? These questions are essential because they help us identify behaviors that emerge in our adult life and limit us. A practical example of how to deal with this inner child is to practice self-compassion. Instead of criticizing or ignoring your feelings, treat yourself with the same tenderness you would dedicate to a child. When you feel frustrated or insecure, try to remember how you would help the child who lives inside you, offering love and acceptance rather than judgment. When we begin to care for our inner child, we become more capable of entering into healthy and mature relationships. Instead of projecting our needs onto other people, we start to fill these gaps within ourselves. This requires patience and dedication, but the results are profoundly transformative. It's as if by healing this child, you create an internal space of peace and trust that reflects in your interactions with others. This process isn't about denying what happened in the past, but about recognizing and releasing old wounds to live in a freer and fuller way. When the inner child is healed, relationships with others can be more balanced because you become more whole and more secure in who you are. Self-respect is the foundation for any healthy relationship. Jung said that to live fully, one must first understand and respect oneself. When we're in internal harmony, our relationships tend to be more balanced. Respect for yourself is reflected in your behaviors and boundaries. If you respect yourself, you know what you deserve and what you won't accept in a relationship. A practical way to cultivate self-respect is to practice for self-awareness. This means reflecting on your emotions and actions without judgment. By doing this, you begin to notice negative patterns that need to change. If you always put yourself second, maybe it's time to change that. Learning to say no and establishing clear boundaries strengthens your respect for yourself. When you respect yourself, others begin to respect you too. Relationships based on disrespect and manipulation start to disappear. You attract people who also have a good sense of self-respect. These bonds are more genuine and balanced, creating a foundation of trust. Self-respect transforms your social life, bringing deeper and more authentic connections. The law of synchronicity refers to the meaningful connection between seemingly random events. Jung believed that nothing happens by chance. Everything occurs for a reason. In relationships, this manifests when we meet people at the right time, as if life had prepared us for it. If you're in tune with yourself, the people who cross your path will have something to teach or share. Synchronicity reminds us that relationships aren't the fruits of chance, but of a deep alignment with our inner process. To experience this law, it's necessary to be attentive to coincidences and signs that appear throughout life. For example, an unexpected encounter with someone who's in the right place at the right time, or a conversation that changes your perspective. These moments might seem accidental, but they're actually opportunities for growth. Paying attention to these synchronicities helps us navigate life with more confidence, knowing we're on the right path. After all, what seems to be a mistake or a surprise is often synchronicity calling our attention. Synchronicity also applies to relationships, as the people who appear in our lives may have an essential role in our development. They teach us, challenge us, or help us grow in unexpected ways. The true magic happens when we allow ourselves to realize that these relationships were attracted by something deep within us. Synchronicity creates a space for us to connect with what is meaningful and real, instead of following relationships based only on conventions or superficialities. Collective healing goes beyond our individual experiences, reflecting the impact of our relationships on society as a whole. Jung believed that personal transformation not only influences our lives, but also the collective. When we manage to heal our own emotional wounds, this reverberates around us, affecting the people with whom we relate. Healthy relationships have the power to change a community, creating a cycle of respect and empathy. True healing begins when each of us becomes an agent of transformation. The healing process begins with the individual, but its repercussions can be profound. For example, a person who works on their self-esteem and relationship patterns can inspire others to do the same. Small changes in our bonds can generate a cascade effect, creating a more harmonious and collaborative society. If you dedicate yourself to improving the quality of your relationships, this energy spreads to everyone around you, becoming contagious. The collective can only evolve when each of us allows this internal transformation. Therefore, healing relationships isn't just a personal task, but a collective responsibility. By cultivating empathy, communication, and respect in our bonds, we're contributing to building a better world. Each step toward inner healing also reflects a step toward social transformation. We are all pieces of this great puzzle, and when we heal ourselves, we heal the world around us, establishing a new dynamic between people. Maintaining a healthy long-term relationship requires constant dedication and a mutual commitment to personal growth. Jung suggested that the path to a lasting relationship passes through the individuation of both partners. This means that, over time, each person needs to continue evolving, facing their own fears and limitations. Healthy relationships aren't built just on present happiness, but on the willingness to face challenges that arise, together with honesty and courage. The key is to realize that the journey of self-discovery never ends. Open and sincere communication is fundamental to maintaining any lasting bond. When both partners feel heard and understood, the relationship strengthens. It's necessary to create a safe space where each can express their needs, frustrations, and desires without fear of judgment. This also implies learning to resolve conflicts respectfully without resorting to aggression or silence. By keeping communication flowing, the relationship stays healthy and in constant evolution. Finally, it's important to remember that relationships are dynamic. They need to be constantly cultivated with patience and dedication. Jung taught that the process of individuation and transformation is continuous, and the same applies to relationships. Both partners must be willing to adapt and grow together. This means nurturing love with small daily gestures, with understanding, and with the willingness to always rediscover each other. Healthy relationships aren't perfect, but they're capable of reinventing themselves with each new phase of life. Now that you've learned how to break free from toxic relationships, it's time to apply this knowledge in your life. Ask yourself, what patterns are you still repeating? What can you change to create the love and peace you deserve? Remember, change begins within you, and the transformation you seek is within your reach. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue following this type of content and take more steps on your journey of self-discovery. Don't forget to also watch the video linked here in the card, which will help you even more in this transformation process. Let's go on this journey of evolution together.